The final results from New Hampshire are in, and we have the numbers for you. We have the numbers, and we have an explanation for how a number can be much larger than a number and still be somehow smaller in the end. So we're going to get to that shortly, but first, the final Republican numbers. Let's bring up this graphic. You're going to see the breakdown. Trump with just over 100,000 votes. I'm sure he'll reference that, 35%. So it kept going between 34 and 35 throughout the night. He ended up with the 35. Kasich doing admirably, almost half as many total votes, almost, with 16% there. And you're seeing that although it looks like a big difference between Kasich, Cruz, Bush, and Rubio, the actual delegate change up until you get to Rubio doesn't really matter that much. And Rubio getting hosed there, only 1,000 less votes than Bush, 0 delegates to Bush's 2.
Yeah, that didn't work out well for him.
No.
So now when you look at this board, there are a couple of things that stand out at you.
Trump did win.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. The one is how everybody's celebrating Kasich's kind of victory today when he got destroyed by Trump. He lost by 19 points. Trump had more delegates than all the rest of them combined. So 19-point win is pretty large.
Yeah, but John Kasich now has Joe-mentum.
So I get it. Kasich's thrilled to have finished above Jeb Bush, who had so much more money, Marco Rubio, who so much of the establishment donors love.
Yeah.
But overall, still not a great day for any of them not named Trump.
Yeah. No, it's not. Now let's jump over to the Democratic side. The final number is there. You're seeing Sanders with 60% to the 38% for Clinton. So that's 21, 22 points higher than predicted by most people. 151,000 votes, so 50% more votes total than Trump, with Clinton, who came in second and kind of a distant second, almost getting as many votes as Trump in New Hampshire. And of course, New Hampshire, a more liberal state, or a more Democratic state anyway. But the interesting number that comes out of that is that 60 to 38 still results in 15 to 15 delegates, which is interesting, and we'll return to that shortly. But there's one other thing we have to talk about first. If we can bring up graphic 3, you're going to see a breakdown of the polling averages for Iowa and New Hampshire, the results for Iowa and New Hampshire per candidate, and the results versus polling. Don't worry too much about the first two columns. The third is how much better or worse each candidate did than the average polling there. And you're seeing that Rubio is actually the king there in Iowa, doing 6.2 points better, although he drops down to negative 3.4 in New Hampshire. But so that doesn't really say that much. But for Sanders, he was at 5.7% more in Iowa, 5.5% more in New Hampshire, starting to establish a trend there. So when you see that he's down by a lot versus Clinton, you might be able to reasonably say, well, it's probably about 5.5 points less than it seems. With Clinton underperforming, by the way, it's very slightly.
So as you looked at the Republicans there, almost all of them that did well in Iowa did poorly in New Hampshire. So as John pointed out with Rubio, it applies to Trump and to others. There's no discernible pattern there. Whereas on the Democratic side, there's a very clear pattern. Now, it's only 2 states, so let's not overanalyze.
It's the minimum to establish a pattern.
That's right. But Bernie Sanders outperforming what was expected results, the polling in both Iowa and New Hampshire, obviously, because of that, Hillary Clinton underperforming in both of those. So that goes to the idea that Bernie Sanders' momentum might actually lead to more people going out to vote.
Yeah.
So far in the first 2 states, it definitively has.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I mean, we could break down all the different demographics. We alluded to them yesterday, but that he basically destroyed in every category not white and rich. Mm-hmm. And I believe he still won by 7 points in that category even. But he destroyed in all the others. And look, anything can happen in these next elections, but I've been reading a lot of editorials, which I shouldn't because it makes me not able to sleep happily anyway. And they're talking about electability, and they're talking about what's going to happen in these other states, and he does way better amongst independents, way better amongst young people, significantly better amongst women, like better amongst conservatives and independents, and he's the liberal one.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you want to talk about a wave in the general election, that's how you generate it, is with those groups, and he's the one that draws those people in.
So 2 points about that. Now, almost all the Republican candidates are talking about what if they had to go up against Bernie Sanders. So that's an interesting change in dialogue there. They're beginning to view him as the threat that the polling indicates. And number 2, Trump activists on the day of the voting in New Hampshire were trying to convince independents to not go to the Democratic side and vote for Bernie Sanders, but to come to the Republican side and vote for Donald Trump. So they didn't try to do that with Hillary Clinton supporters because there aren't that many independents who are Hillary Clinton supporters. So that is an indication on the ground when they need the votes, the Republicans believed that Bernie Sanders has almost all of them on the independent side. That is a central thesis in electability.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thesis that Sanders would lay out there is, I am clearly more electable based on polling, one-on-one matchups, indisputable in almost all the swing states, right? And the fact that the other side believes I have all the independents, as well as the polling showing that very, very clearly. You know what that means? That means I'm more electable.
Exactly.
No ands, ifs, or buts about it.
Yeah, and a lot of people genuinely, enthusiastically excited about him. So let's return to the 15-15 and the tactic that I saw coming out of Bernie Sanders' win. So we had some of the obvious ones. Oh, he was always going to win. He's from Vermont. Well, always, he was down by like 50 points last year. So always, maybe not. Maybe he had to gain 70 points in the interim. But I guess if you gain 70 points, you're probably going to win. So that they're certainly saying that. He's never going to win South Carolina and Nevada, which they might end up being accurate on. But the other one that I saw, and it was some of the journalists that I respect, but I also know them to be Hillary Clinton supporters, started retweeting all this stuff about superdelegates. And very enthusiastically pointing out that, well, while he has 50-odd delegates after the two races, 40 to 50, she already has 400 and something. As if to imply that she has won far more delegates, as if she's won far more elections when she hasn't yet really won even one election. And that's because of the superdelegates. And the superdelegates, I just did a full final judgment about what is a superdelegate, how did it start, why was it established. But that is why he can win by 22 points in New Hampshire. And they put on the graphic 15-15 as if what they earned was the same. Every news outlet that puts those numbers is lying to its audience because it implies that superdelegates are the same as delegates. It implies that they are a democratic outcome of an election as opposed to an anti-democratic attempt to subvert elections. And it implies that she has those votes. Yeah. They're currently endorsing her. They were endorsing her heavily against Barack Obama, and they changed in the end because the people chose Barack Obama.
So let me explain a couple of things here. Number one, those superdelegate votes will not stand, period. Okay, now, secondly, it is not a sign of strength, it is a sign of weakness in this particular election to say all the politicians support me. Congratulations, people despise that. That's why you lost 70 points in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And the same people telling us now that Bernie's victory was inevitable was telling us that it was impossible before.
Exactly.
How many times have I told you this about different topics, whether it's Wolfpack or anything else? First they tell you it's impossible, then after you win they tell you it was inevitable, right? So, and now, right now, they say, oh, it's okay, he won in New Hampshire, but for him to win nationally is impossible. Mm-hmm. Later they will tell us it was inevitable, right? Yeah. So these are the same knuckleheads that drive John crazy when he reads those editorials and those columns, etc. So the mainstream pundits. Okay, now more importantly, the superdelegate issue. As Ben Mankiewicz said in our live coverage last night of the election, it's funny here that the Democrats are far more elitist than the Republicans in terms of how they do delegates. They have these superdelegates that say, tis, people, we're not going to just rely solely on you. We're going to stack the system in favor of the establishment. The establishment loves Hillary Clinton, and we will tip the scales. And my answer to that is no, you won't, because if it turns out Bernie Sanders wins more votes through this primary and caucus system, and then the superdelegates go, nah, we're going to throw it to Hillary anyway, the political revolution will no longer be just political. So don't fuck around with that. And I'm not saying that as a threat or anything like that. We're on the side of being liberals, and we're peaceful, and we believe in, if anything, civil disobedience. But if you rip away democracy and on the Democratic side and go, nah, we don't really care how you voted, the smart people in Washington have decided that we like Hillary Clinton better, you are going to have massive trouble on your head, okay? You thought the conventions sometimes in the 1960s, the Democratic conventions were ugly. Wait till you get a load of this convention. Yeah. This convention will be a mess. It'll be a catastrophe if the superdelegates say, oh yeah, democracy. We don't care about that. No. you can take your burn and take it elsewhere. We're going to pick the slimy politician that you rejected because we're also slimy politicians.
Yeah.
It would be a mess beyond description.
Yeah.
And so don't mess around with that. It's going to get ugly. I'm not telling you that I'm basically telling you that as a warning.
Prediction,
right?
yeah.
Right, it's a prediction. So don't do it because that's exactly what will happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I was saying in the final judgment, it is for emergencies in case of burning, break glass for superdelegates. And it's just 15% less democracy. And some of the people who were enthusiastically tweeting out that she had the advantage there, people who I'm sure if you ask them, hey, would you like more inclusion, more people to vote, make it easier to vote, get more people involved in the system, make sure that they have a voice, they'd say, yeah, I love all of that stuff. Oh, should she be protected by the superdelegates? Let's do it. Yes, sign me up. I want to take away the people's ability to decide for themselves. But really fast, I do want to break down some of these numbers just because I found them to be interesting, including one number in particular. So she already has over half. Right now, her campaign has mounted an aggressive effort to secure about 360 superdelegates across the country. Sanders has a total of 8 at this point, although that's not even as impressive as it sounds in just a second.
So can I just say, she made the same mistake last time around, 2008, collected all these superdelegates, which was a giant waste of time and money. Because at the end, when Obama won the vote, the superdelegates went to Obama because they would have had, again, a bloody mess on their hands if they had said, no, we're superseding the wishes of the people, right?
Exactly.
So this is a giant waste of time. Your superdelegates don't amount to dick, okay? Yeah. So go keep wasting more time collecting politicians and putting them up on your mantle. All it does is hurt you, not help you.
Exactly, yeah. And by the way, you should watch the breakdown in the final judgment for the full history of all this. But just in case, they are members of Congress, the House, the Senate, former mayors and DNC party officials, and Bill Clinton is one of them. That's who these people are. So in the breakdown, in Congress, she has 39 of 47 senators with 7 uncommitted. Bernie Sanders has 1. That's Senator Bernie Sanders. That's one of his 8, by the way. It's him. Which, by the way, I think he should make a political statement by refusing to endorse himself. Refuse to exercise his ability. So in the House, she's up 157 to 2, and in the DNC, it's 138 to 10. Wow, he's actually doing better in the DNC than in the House. That's amazing.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why. Because the DNC has younger members. So that's why he'll get 10 votes in the DNC.
It's technically impossible for them to have young.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of guys, obviously, 2 guys in the Progressive Caucus who are backing Bernie Sanders in the House. Otherwise, they're also mostly rich millionaires who are part of the establishment and owe the Clinton family.
Yeah. And let's keep it real. When they gave that endorsement, they thought that his chances of winning were just about 0. And so there's no point in endorsing Bernie Sanders if he has no chance of winning. Why not give that to Hillary and get some sort of favor in the future? Not that she could ever be bought, but that's why you do these endorsements. But now, when he's doing much better, by the way, it also includes people like Bill Clinton, Howard Dean, Dick Gephardt, Walter Mondale. She's 8 to 1 in that group, and overall she has 355 to 14 with 341 uncommitted there.
So,
and again, these are based on like comments that people have made, statements. These are not votes that have been cast. They will not be cast for many months at this point.
Okay, 2 final takeaways from this. It turns out Walter Mondale's still alive. Good for Walter Mondale.
I didn't know that either, actually.
And finally, what was the real delegate count in New Hampshire on the Democratic side? It was 15 to 9 based on the voting. Bernie Sanders with a 22-point win in terms of percentages. So he got 15 delegates for that. That's what it looks like will be the final tally. And Hillary Clinton got 9. The other 6 that Hillary Clinton has are superdelegates. There are 2 other superdelegates that are yet undecided. They say they'll decide closer to the convention. No, you won't. You'll decide. I mean, you decide. You can claim that you're going to decide later, but here's your decision. Bernie Sanders, the dude won by 22 points in your state.
Yeah.
You don't get to make a different decision than that if you're representing your state.
Which, by the way, means that these are the 2 more ethical of the people.
Yeah,
because they're actually potentially going to go by based on what their people actually want.
But even so, they say, I'm still undecided.
That's true.
What percentage of the vote could Bernie Sanders have won to make you have decided today? What if he won by 42 points? What if he won by 92 points? Would you still be undecided? And the answer is actually yes, because you're a politician and you're trying to figure out what's more to your advantage. Well, good luck with that, because the people that are voting have no fucking interest in that. And again, if you try to enforce any of that bullshit, you will have a real revolution on your hands.